Hello and welcome to this Confluence Q&A. All of these questions came out of a recent live training I did. I'll have a link to the recording somewhere up in here. I went through and I grabbed every question that I could, even the ones I answered in the recording. I'll show them to you and then I'll explain them. I might not get super in-depth with everything. There are some very good questions. For those, I'll answer them quickly here, and then I'll have an entire follow-up video with more thoughts and answers to it. All right, let's jump in. A number of questions about restrictions and access and editing. I did an earlier video on this topic. I'll have it up in the top left again for you. But let's pop over to Confluence real quick and just see what this looks like. Here we are in my Confluence instance, and I'm just going to go to any page in a space. Now, to examine the space permissions, I have to be a space admin. If I'm not a space admin, I'm not going to see the space settings menu. And this is what you go into to find those settings. And that just shows up right here if you're a space admin. So if you don't see this, you'll have to go find the space admin. Your IT team can help or your Confluence administrator can help. I'm just going to open this up. And I'm showing this to you because if we don't have access to this space, we can't do anything at all in it. So here I can see there are some users with access, as well as some groups. Now I can also do things like my guest and anonymous access. I'll touch on this a bit later. But I'm going to focus on users. This individual, Robert Heen, can view all and even delete their own. And then can add things like pages, as well as archive and delete them. So the green check marks tell me what this person or group can do. If I want someone to be able to add a page or a blog, they'll have to show up somewhere in either users or be part of a group that have the add permission. Now, archiving and deletion will come up later, but this is also where you'll go to check to see if folks can do that. So step one is make sure someone has the add permission. Now, within the space, if you have the ability to edit pages, you still might be restricted. So here, I'm just going to go to maybe Confluence plus Jira, and now we'll talk about page restrictions. So if you're looking this up online, space permissions, or the overarching permissions are on the whole space. You need those to be able to create or edit or archive. And on a page or a blog post, you can restrict. And that's what this little lock does. So if I have the permission that lets me restrict pages or blogs, I'll see the lock and I'll be able to change this. So I can lock it down so only folks can view it, but only some can edit, or lock it so no one can see or edit. Now these permissions do inherit down. So if I have child pages, for example, my Confluence Basics page has a lock and only I can edit it and no one can see it. So I can see right here in the top line, this is the most restrictive. All of the children will start out with the same exact permission. I have an open red lock, I'll open it up. And I can see restricted to specific people by the parent. I can further restrict it, but only within that group. So if I had 5 people at the parent, I might restrict this one to only 3 of them. But I cannot make the children more permissive than the parents. I could move it out, or I could change the parents' permissions. Now, commonly, someone may not have access to a space, making it very frustrating to give them access. So that's the first thing I would check. Again, talk to your space admin, or just check yourself if you can. So open up space settings right here on the side, and then look for users or groups. Open it up, and make sure they're listed in here. At least they need view, and that's this column, but they might also have add. So this is the first thing I check. And next, if they still can't see the page, then I'll go to the page itself and check the restrictions up here in this little lock icon. So if there's further restrictions, I'll have to make sure they're in here or talk to someone to get them that. All right, back to our next question. How can I use Confluence from Jira and vice versa? There are a number of great questions in how do I make these tools play nice together. Because they are both from Atlassian, they are tightly integrated natively. So I have an example instance. This does require having both Confluence and Jira. Your Atlassian administrator can then connect those or make sure they're tied in if you don't see them. But it's a great way to share information between systems. Now, here I have an example page showing 2 ways to share this information. This top one is just a hyperlink I've copied and pasted out of Jira directly into Confluence. And Confluence is smart enough to realize it's a Jira link, and so it formats it just like this. A great quick way to show information from Jira into Confluence. Now the bottom is actually a JQL or Jira Query Language Search. So a group of tickets, maybe everything from a single sprint or something else. I'm going to edit the page and just show you what this looks like, but both are very quick to set up. They do require some knowledge of Jira, and the Jira and Confluence instances you want to share information between do need to be connected, which your Atlassian administrator can help. But because they're so natively tied together, it's super easy. Here I can see just a raw URL, and I have some different options to show it inline, a nice little card, and even embed the ticket. Now this works with most hyperlinks. You can do this with like Google Docs and some other things. So it's a great way to show information between the systems a little bit more gracefully than just a big old list of links. This bottom piece is actually a macro. And I'll dig more into macros, specifically Jira related ones in another video. There's a lot we can learn from it. But I've basically asked Confluence to reach into a specific Jira instance that I'm tied to and grab everything from a single project. Now, if I know a little bit more about Jira and JQL, I can actually write JQL right in here to get a list. If you don't know JQL, that's totally fine. Talk to someone at your company who does. Talk to your Atlassian admin or a space admin, or someone who uses Jira a lot to help you find what you need so you can put it right on your Confluence page. Next, we're going to go into Jira to look at these. Now, a quick note, you do need access to be able to see these tickets in Jira in order to see them in Confluence. So if you send someone to this page and they don't have access to the Plat project or Jira at all, they'll see nothing here or an error. And if you only have access to some tickets, they'll be excluded from these macros. So again, permissions are still going to be respected. Now, if I go into Jira to look at this ticket that's linked, I can see it's mentioned on a Confluence page. So someone working on this ticket can quickly see, oh, this is tied to Confluence. I use this a lot, especially for my support teams, so they can see in-progress work that's helping them improve. It's also a great way, if you've identified some improvement on a Confluence page itself, to drop a ticket right on it so someone can update it. For example, if I select text, I can click Create Issue, insert it into Jira, and then my team will see exactly where they need to go to update something. And it will show on the Confluence page, oh, there's a ticket related to this. I don't recommend putting it right in the middle of text, but just demonstrating, you can now see there's a new ticket. I do this a lot to communicate with other teams because you can put the work right where it needs to be done. So that's the easiest ways to connect these two things. Just paste in a hyperlink, use a macro, and then you can select text. And from the Jira side, once it's linked, you'll see this. And you can also click this little drop down to link a Confluence page. Again, permissions are respected. So if you don't have view access, you wouldn't be able to do this. Okay, let's pop back over to our next set of questions. I really like this question. How can we create a space to get our staff to collaborate? We want people to visit them. We have like 2,000 people. No one uses it, etc. This will definitely be its own video. I have an entire Udemy course as well to help people with knowledge bases and how to set it up. But for the purpose of this question, it's a lot of change management and a lot of communication and a lot of building buy-in from executives. You'd have to go to directors or vice presidents or someone in charge and convince them of the need to use Confluence. Make sure they know what information is in there and why their team should use it. And once they're convinced that it works well or is a good idea, work with those teams to make this part of their daily life. I can imagine there's services or tools you only go to every once in a while, and it can be annoying or bothersome. You don't know how to use it. You don't know where it is. You forget how it works. Same thing with Confluence. If folks aren't using it regularly and trust that the information in there is up to date and accurate, they're not going to use it. So it does require some work to go in and make sure the information there is solid and updated and relevant, and a lot of work talking to people and building excitement and showing them how it works. Again, I'll have a whole video talking through how do you get buy-in and get people to use it, but it's a lot of selling the idea of how much it's worth. Is there a way to clean version history? Popping back into Confluence, version history or page history can be found on the menu in the top right on a page. And here I can see a list of every change made to it. The current version, what I'm looking at now, a status or comments if there are any. I can even compare them. And then I can also restore to a prior version, or if I have permissions, delete the version. I'm not aware of a way to do this automatically. I imagine automations might be able to help go and clean page history. Personally, I like to have page history because it lets me know what's happened to the page and someone can go in and see updates. Although I could see some use cases for wiping these out if we don't need them. Now, if you're on Data Center, which is another version or type of Confluence, your administrator likely has some tools that help them to go through and delete older versions to free up space. But again, here I have the space permissions to go and delete these, so I could click delete and scrub that version. Again, personally, I don't do this very much, and I'll have another video digging into page history, its use, and what it's for. There were a few questions about sharing pages or moving pages between spaces, and this is definitely possible. Going back into Confluence, we may have an instance where I build out a page in one space. Maybe I build out this great how-to information about Confluence and I want to put it somewhere else. If I click on more actions, there's a move option. And this also shows up on the page itself, move. And this will allow me to move it within a space, which I could also do by clicking and dragging in the page tree. Or I can move between spaces. Now this does require me to have the ability to add pages in the target space. So if I couldn't add pages to heen.tech, I wouldn't be able to do this. But from here, I can say where I want it to go. Should it be a child of a page or somewhere else? And then click move. And this entire page, and if it has any children, will be moved into the new space. Now there is one more way to show information between spaces. For this example, I'm going to go into a different space, heen.tech. And let's pretend there's information in another space I want to display here. I'll create a new page, and there's a macro called include page that will show the information from one page on top of another one. I'll use this to help include part of one page as part of another one, maybe not as the whole thing, but maybe somewhere underneath. Maybe I want to pull in Confluence Basics, and the words under the name of the page are the space it's in. So if I have view access, I might be able to do this. If I can't find it, I might not have access to the page or it doesn't exist. But I'll just click on it, and we'll see that macro automatically update with whatever's on that target page. I will typically use this to, again, insert information in the middle of a page instead of copying the whole thing over. So I might have something else in the body of this page that gives some additional context or something. But when I publish this, everything that macro pulls in will be automatically mirrored, pulled in from that other page. A great way to help keep things up to date between spaces or even within one that reduces the amount of need to edit. This is a great question, some basic tips. Check out my channel. There's a lot of great information there. I'll keep adding. This video also has some from other folks, but there's no coding, which is great. If you're using Confluence Cloud, you don't even have to really administer anything. Confluence takes care of it for you. But some high-level tips are things like formatting. Take time to add headers and put line breaks and other things on the page so it isn't just a big wall of text that people have to stare at. Consider who's going to use your Confluence. Is it an engineering team or customers or HR or someone else? This will help you figure out what should go in there and what should it look like. And then get more people involved in updating it. You shouldn't just have one person who goes in and it's their job to do it and no one else touches it. The more people you have going in there to helping build it out and maintain it and update it, the better it's going to be. Why can a page name not be used more than once? This is a great question. I'll pop back into my Confluence instance. Here I have the page called copy text. I'm going to try and make another copy test and just see what happens. Now here, Confluence is going to yell at me. Give it a unique name. Now, it has to be unique within a space. So this is a good caveat. I could have a copy test in a different space. So if I were to move this, say, into the Robert Heen space and put it under Robert Heen Home, Confluence shouldn't have a problem with that because copy test doesn't exist in Robert Heen yet. And here we go, I can publish it. So the page name has to be unique within a space. And this, to me, makes a lot of sense. If I go into an HR space and I'm looking for policies, I should expect there'd only be one page about policies, not two. That would be confusing for the user. But different spaces or different teams or projects could have different policies, so it makes sense to have that name. Having a good, unique name makes it much easier for folks to find your content, especially when searching. Imagine coming up here, again, this policy example, and you type in policy and there's 15 pages with all the same name. it would be a little bit confusing for folks. So take some time, come up with a unique name, and if you run into another page with the same name, think through how you might be able to change it. Okay, we're going to pop over to our next question. Archiving removes something from search scope. When we think about our pages, we can archive them, which removes them from the page tree, so they won't visually show up. Popping back into Confluence, I'm going to take this copy test page and archive it. Now, this requires the space permission to do this, but I'll click Archive, and I'll give it a reason. I always encourage folks to leave that note, and I'll actually have an entire additional training on archiving and deletion, because these are important topics. But you'll notice it's gone from my page tree. It doesn't show up in here anymore. And it's going to be listed out in a separate spot under Archived Pages. Now, this requires admin permissions, so I have to be a space admin. So here I can see Copy Test under Archived Pages. Now, this is in the Robert Heen space, so if I search for it, by default it won't show up because it's been archived. However, if I open up Advanced Search, I do have a filter to show archived content, and this will then include both copies of that page, because one's in the Robert Heen space and one's in Heen.tech. So by default, it won't be shown, and this is something that can confuse folks. They don't know about that filter, but it can show up in search. Now, deleted pages will not show up in search because they've been deleted. Will there be more sessions, and where should I go for updates? This is in relation to the live training I did. Yes, I'm planning on doing at least one a month, very similar, and looking at expanding out to different basic topics in Confluence. My YouTube page will also keep posting information like this. So if you have specific questions, drop a comment on here or any of my videos, and I'll be happy to build it out. There's a lot going on in Confluence, and it takes a little while to learn it. So yes, there will be more sessions. Is there a way to restore deleted pages? Here we are in Confluence, and I have a draft. Now, if I delete a draft, it's gone immediately. So it's never been published. And it's just asking me, am I sure I want to do this? So for this example, I'll cancel, because I want to show you what it's like if you delete a page. So I'm going to open this draft, and I'm just going to give it a name, and I'm going to publish it. Now, the delete permission is required in order to do this. So if you don't have the delete permission, you won't see delete. And again, I'll have a whole video on deletion and archiving. It's going to ask me, should I archive it instead? Generally, we're going to want to archive information because it could still be searchable. We still might want to access it later, but here, let's delete it. I click delete, and I get a little note saying content deleted. It's gone. It no longer shows up in my page tree. It also wouldn't show up in search. If I'm a space admin, however, I can click on space settings, and I can go find the trash, which shows up under manage content. And if I open this up, I should see that page I just deleted. Now, space admins can purge the trash, either with purge all or purge a specific page, and this will get rid of it permanently. So you want to be very careful if you have this ability to only do it when you're absolutely sure the page should be completely removed forever. You can also restore it, and this will kick it back into the page tree. But here, if I click purge, I'm going to get a warning, are you sure? And then I'll just click, okay, I'm sure. And now the page is gone from the trash. The trash is empty. The page never existed. So that's how the trash works. Again, it's kind of a one-way trip for most folks. And in most places I work, I didn't have that deletion option. I wasn't, trusted to have it. So most of the time, most people won't see this. They might have archive, or they might have to put in an IT ticket or support ticket to have someone remove that content for them. All right, on to our next question. Do blogs keep a version history? They sure do. Popping back into Confluence. Blogs are very, very similar to pages. This is another topic I'll have an entire video on. I'm going to quickly find a space that has a blog. Oh, here we go. And I'll open up this one. I tend to use blogs for point-in-time updates, product updates, things that happen regularly, but I don't have to go and update. And here we have our page history. It will look the same as a page. It's even called page history, even though it's technically a blog post. I can restore it, compare them, delete, etc. And again, there'll be a whole separate video just on how the version history works in Confluence to dig into it more. Can we link Confluence pages to our internal intranet? I believe what this question is asking is, can we link into Confluence from other places? And we can. If you just grab the URL, so just grab this entire URL just like you would for any web page, copy and paste this into some website, into an email, a Slack message, instant message, text message, it will function like a regular hyperlink and take someone here. Now, keep in mind that permissions will be respected. So if the person you send this to can't see the Confluence Basics page, for example, because it's either restricted or they don't have space permissions, or they're not a user in your instance, they'll get an error saying the page might not exist. And that can be very frustrating. So I tend to double check before I share the link, which again is just up in the URL, or posting it somewhere, that the folks who would access it could be able to get to this page without any trouble. Can we use a trial version of Confluence? Yes. You've essentially seen me using one. I use one to test things out and to just see what's going on. I'll put this link in the description, but if you Google free Confluence Instance, you should get here, as long as it's atlassian.com. And you can get a free tier. Up to 10 users can jump in here. So if you have a small team or you're working on side projects, you can use it. There are some limitations. You'll notice only 2 gigabytes of file storage and things like permissions and the artificial intelligence and calendars and other things aren't included. It is a great free product, and if you don't have Confluence yet and want to learn it, this is a great way to learn. So I'll encourage you to jump in and get a free one and tinker with it. And again, I'll have a video showing every step of how to set this up because it's a wonderful learning tool. What do I think of the Confluence Mobile App, and do I use it? I don't personally use it very much, and that's because I happen to be at a computer most of the time, so I can just sit here and use Confluence on the web. That said, I have had instances where I need to use the Confluence mobile app. Generally, this is when I'm on the go, or if I want to quickly look something up, and I tend to use it mainly to look up information, not so much to edit or change things, just because it's hard for me to use my thumbs to type and manipulate the information as much. But again, I do think it is a good app. Personally, I don't use it all that much. Is there a way to upload documents into Confluence? I can't tell from this question if we are asking, can I add like an attachment, like take a whole file and put it in Confluence? Or can I import a Google Doc or a .docx file as a Confluence page? But the answer to both is you can. So here we are in Confluence, and here I have Confluence Basics. If I go to edit this page, I'll have the ability to click on this icon up here, add image, video, or file, and this will let me add an image, video, or file directly to this Confluence page. So I might want to grab some kind of image and just stick it right in here. You can do the same thing with video. It's a great way to share content. And then you have some options in terms of how it's shown or displayed. I'll dig more into what you can do with this in a separate video. It's a great topic and a great way to share information and bring it closer to the folks who need it. Now, the other possible way this question could be asked is, if I have a Google Doc, let's say, how can I add it to Confluence? You can actually add it as a page. So I'm just going to create a new page. And when it first loads, I get templates on the right side. But right next to it is an import button. So I'm going to click on that. And this right now allows me to import files from one of 3 places. It's essentially going to convert a document. Now I'll have to connect the accounts. So I'll do that here. And once the accounts are connected, I'm going to see a list of all the documents I could connect. Here I'll use example page, which again is my very quick example I threw together. And let's say my import is completed, so I'll click Finish. Longer documents might take a bit longer for it to process, but here I see all the information that was in my example page right here. You'll notice it inserted something called an anchor, and I'll talk about this in a future question. And then when I publish it, it's going to look almost exactly like that Google Doc. This is a great way to convert existing documentation into something that fits right into Confluence. Next, we've got, does adding a comment notify the author, assuming they weren't @mentioned? There isn't really the concept of an author in Confluence, but there is a page owner. And this shows up at the top of a page, and a page can have one and only one owner. This individual would get notified if there's a comment on the page, even if they aren't @mentioned. Now, that's assuming their notification settings allow them to get emails. And again, I'll dig into notification settings in a future video. There's a ton in there. But this person, Robert Heen, would get notified of comments that get made. Are you on the cloud or data center version? This got asked several times, and I forgot to clarify in the live training. But if you look at the URL of my instance, it's called creators.demo1.atlassian.net. So when I see this in a URL, it tells me it is Confluence Cloud. There are ways you can change the URL to a company site, but most groups I work with that are on cloud, just leave it. And it's, name of company.atlassian.net. If you set up your own free site, which will be a future video, and I briefly mentioned in an earlier question, you can set your own level domain there. Data center will also tie to your company's domain, so it would look different. But when you see .atlassian.net, that's a very clear indication you're in cloud. Are those links in the TOC? I got a kick out of this question, and it kind of blew somebody's mind. TOC is short for Table of Contents, and I'll show you the exact page we were looking at. But here at the top, we can see some hyperlinks. Now, these hyperlinks will take me to the header that is below. So the Table of Contents macro will automatically build these hyperlinks that take you directly to the header. And it's kind of a bonus. If you click this right here, copy link to header, that will also take someone there. So you could give them that in an email or in a chat. So if I edit this, I'm not going to be able to change these links manually. Instead, I would have to add or change the headers. And then that Table of Contents macro will just automatically update. And then now I've got a hyperlink. This is a great way to quickly make pages more useful because you don't have to worry about updating that hyperlink yourself. Anchor's rule, not exactly a question, but I'll unpack this one. We briefly saw anchors in an earlier question. If I go to edit this page, I'll see some interesting text before my background header, but this is an anchor. Anchors let me hyperlink to a direct spot, and we can see here creates an anchor inside the page. You'll notice that the default anchor is a string of essentially gibberish. This is a unique identifier that Confluence gives it. So I always encourage folks to change the name, but anchors can be hyperlinked. So you could have an anchor in the middle of a paragraph to take someone right there, or an anchor next to an image or video that lets someone go right to that image or video without having to click around. It's a great way to increase usability and let folks get to content more quickly. Can I comment on segments of a page like a Word document? This is a great question. I'm going to pop right back into Confluence. And I need a published page, but if I'm browsing a page, I have a few ways I can comment. I can comment at the bottom, which will be on the page itself. I can select specific text on the page, and I can click comment. Or if I mouse over the line, you'll see this little comment bubble appear. And I can click on this to select that entire block of text. I'll have another video on commenting because it's so useful, but this is a great way to flag a spelling mistake, a question on something, clarification that you can then @mention, or again, the page owner, as we spoke about in an earlier question, would get a notification. It's a wonderful way to collaborate without having to get on a Zoom call or call somebody up. These questions relate a little bit to SharePoint. Can we use Confluence like SharePoint, and our space is similar to sites in SharePoint? I honestly haven't used SharePoint in probably 15 years, so I'm very, very out of date. Spaces in Confluence, though, are just a portion of Confluence that's dedicated to a certain thing. I think of it like areas of a library. There might be biology or literature or kids' books. Same thing in Confluence. I might have one for my engineering team, or one for a specific project HR is working on, or onboarding for new workers. I imagine sites in SharePoint are similar, a way to break up content. So that concept could carry over, but it might be expressed differently. And I apologize, I don't use SharePoint, so I don't have a solid answer. Can we use Confluence like SharePoint, where we keep all our documentation and share with everyone? I think that's an awesome idea. Ideally, in my own selfish world, everyone could go to a Confluence instance and everything they would need would be in there. They would have hyperlinks to specific reports they need, or pages with documentation, or videos embedded so they could get it all in one spot. So Confluence is my source of truth for whatever I need, so they don't have to dig through Google Drive or a shared drive or anything else. So ideally, Confluence is that one place everyone can go to get what they need. Oh, all right. And that was all the questions from the first Confluence Live training. I'll put a link for it somewhere up in here so you can go view the whole thing if you want. And there will be more live Confluence trainings. I'll drop some links in the description for the upcoming ones, but please comment if you have specific Confluence questions or you want me to go in deeper to these. I will also be building out more explainer videos for specific things we mentioned, for example, commenting or page history or access, to really dig in so you can understand them. Thank you so much for sticking around. It's a bit longer than I thought initially, but I really hope you found it useful. All right. Again, drop comments with questions, like and subscribe if you haven't, and be on the lookout for more stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.